You know, we want to introduce someone that you're very familiar with. She's Lynda Williams. She's actually a former Secret Service from back in the day, from 2008 to 2011. And obviously, this is your friend. If you
Yeah,
want
well, Lynda, it's good to see you. Good to see you in person. You were working as the lead agent, Secret Service agent with President Carter post-White House. Tell us what exactly your duties were.
So I was fortunate to cover President Carter the entirety of my career from 1988 to my retirement in 2017. But I had a more personal relationship with him in my role as country attaché for the United States Secret Service on the continent of Africa. And that was that 2008 to 2011 window.
So whenever the president would come to Africa, you were the one who monitored all of his movements. You were in charge of orchestrating the protection from him for the entire continent. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. I had all jurisdiction over 21 countries on the continent, so sub-Sahara and 5 countries West Africa. So all the Americans speaking, but absolutely every time the President Carter would come there, either for his global initiatives, he also served as a member of the Elders Group with Nelson Mandela, as well as all of his humanitarian roles that he came to the country, whether it was from monitoring elections to any and every movement to include the FIFA World Cup.
How difficult of a job was that? Because I'm thinking how President Carter, how we know him to be a man who shakes everybody's hand, who's every person's friend. How hard was it for you and your agents to keep up with all of those movements, especially a man who, liked to touch the common man?
Well, you know what? After being with him, you learn his mannerism and you get to expect the unknown, that he is very outgoing. He was very outgoing, that he touched the people. He liked to be in the midst of the people. So it was a pleasure. You just had to remain flexible because you knew that the president was going to do what he wanted to do when he wanted to do. Even in the midst of a movement, he would turn and say, I want to go X, Y, Z. Being that, the former president doesn't get all the assets that a sitting president does. So there was a lot of flexibility. There was a lot of coordination and partnership with our foreign nationals to get him from point A to point Z safely and well received wherever he went.
That said, were there ever times when you said, no, Mr. President, you can't do that? Did you ever say that?
There was only one time, and we were monitoring the elections in Sudan, and it was such a crisis. It was bigger than even his visit, just the terrorist activity that was going on. So we were sequestered to our hotel. Now, I think that was the only time that I remember the president sequestering to our demands during that time, because it did come down to a life and death situation, not only for him, but everybody that was there on that protection move. So other than that, we had to be very flexible, very creative to do exactly what President Carter wanted to do.
You know, Ms. Williams, I'm a kid of the 60s and the 70s, and every time that I saw Secret Service, there were not people of color. They weren't women at all, and obviously this is a role that you played back in the 1980s. What was that selection process like? And when you got the call, what did that mean to you as a person of color and also as a lady?
I stand on the shoulders of many and greatness, and it's from endeavors and politics and governance of President Carter and so many that they leveled the playing field, that I had a right to be here, that I had a right to compete. So I always say that, there were no shortcuts into becoming a special agent. I had to do everything, and I had to be twice as good to be considered half as good. So that was a role that I served in proudly. And looking back reflectively, I'm proud to have served for since President Ronald Reagan until, when President Trump came into office. But being an educator now and getting to tell the reflections and stories and allowing other students to see that they can too become Secret Service. So it's a badge of honor that I carry, and that it's a legacy that I'll always be proud of.
Yes, well, we are so proud of you and the fine job that you did in protecting our president. Finally, I know that President Carter had a special name for you, so tell us about that.
So On the norm, a special agent does not talk directly to the protectee. Now, of course, if the protectee addresses us, and most certainly we will respond. So there was a shorter buffer as he came on the continent of Africa in a post-presidency role. So, as I stated, 99.9% of the times that he was there, I was there orchestrating and overseeing the protective venture that he was on. So he said, "You sure are bossy." And so that became my name. He called me Miss Bossy. And it was so funny on his final visit, he told Mrs. Carter, he said, "Rosalind, she sure is bossy." And Mrs. Carter laughed and said, "Jimmy, I like her." And so from that moment on, I was known as Miss Bossy. And he always asked for me, even after I had left my post on continent of Africa.
Well, Miss Bossy, I mean, Miss Williams, thanks for stopping. I mean, you got to be bossy if you're part of Secret Service, but we really appreciate you stopping by and giving us that context and perspective as well.
Thank you so very much.
It's my honor, and thank you. And I'm honored to have served such a wonderful, wonderful president.
And we salute you as well.